Hey everybody, and welcome to another edition of Board Games Hitting My Table. This is where I talk about all of the games that I have been playing over the last couple of weeks. This episode covering the second half of September 2024. Now these are mostly faster two-player games because these are the games that I have been playing in between more involved games that I'll be covering as new titles on the channel, so keep an eye out for those. But before I get started on these games, I want to give a shout out to the show's sponsor, KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. But let's start with a four-player game of Retta. So this one was hitting the table really regularly, then for some reason it went a little bit quiet for me on the shelf. But this one is a lovely game by Stefan Dora, a great design in his own right. It's definitely reminiscent of a game called Coloretto. You're probably familiar with that game if you're watching this channel. This one has mechanically almost exactly the same, but the scoring is different, where you are trying to collect exactly 3 of these animal tokens of each type to get the maximum amount of points on them. But if you go over that limit, then they're going to start racking up negative points. Now I did add in the new expansion that adds these wolves in, which add a whole bigger risk factor into the game because you have to take them. You can't choose to discard them, but they are taken face down, so your opponent doesn't know what they are. But they are worth a lot of points if you get that trifecta of wolves. And I was just one short of the wolves, but I did manage to pace myself quite well with the other animals, and I don't think I've got negative points on any of them. So this is probably one of the strongest games in terms of knowing when to take your foot off the gas and just take a sensible amount rather than being greedy, because you have 4 rounds to get through, and if you go over those limits, then you are pretty much screwed. But a lovely game. This always goes down well with my game group. That is Retta. I played a 2-player game of Through the Desert, the classic Knizia route building game. This one, I do prefer at higher player counts, but again, I thought I hadn't played it in a little while. I wanted to get it back to the table. It still works really well at 2, but it is better with more. So this one, you are just expanding these camel caravans, trying to reach these points tokens, connecting to these oases to try and get some additional points, and basically trying to section off areas of the board and get additional points for those enclosed segments. And that really did hurt me because my opponent managed to section off 2 or 3 quite large areas due to my poor initial placement, and that managed to swing them the victory. Other than that, it was very close, and I think I did better on the board state, but the cut off of those hexes through those through section off areas of the board definitely paid off massively for my opponent. But I still did enjoy it, but again, I do prefer it at higher player counts. I played a 2-player game of Photograph. So this was a game that has been collecting dust on my shelf for a long time. This is a game I do have to be in the right mood to play it, because it is pretty damn punishing as you are trying to collect these runs of cards of these different suits, but you have to play them in numerical order by only having a maximum gap of 3 cards between them. Now, the trick of this game is that when you're collecting cards from this grid, you cannot reorganize them in your hand except for 1 card that you can bring forward, but you're always forced to play cards equal to the amount you're picking up. So you sometimes have to take big moves and big gambles in order to get more cards played. Otherwise, you're just playing like 1 card per turn, which is probably not going to be enough to secure the victory. Now, fortunately, I think my opponent got themselves in a bit of a conundrum and ended up playing loads of negative cards. And I kind of just sailed through by playing not ultra conservatively, but I did not make too many mistakes, which is a difficult thing to do in this game because it has a very small margin for error. But if you like your clever, tense, tough little card games, Photograph is almost as good as it gets. This game was also known as Wind the Film. Talking about tough games, we played a 2-player game of Babel, infamously one of the meanest card games out there, with this tug-of-war system where you're trying to build these temples. And to do that, you're basically playing these different cards you need a certain amount of cards to build a certain number of temples, but also the cards have unique powers on them which can kind of destroy your opponent's temples or bring them over to your side or convert their troops into your troops. So very confrontational. This game did get mean very quickly. I think I tore down a level 6 temple quite quickly, which of course didn't go down too well with my opponent, but they returned the favour, and I think I even managed to steal a level 6 temple from my opponent. So yeah, big swing of points there. This is a really good little two-player game by Uwe Rosenberg, believe it or not. It does not feel like a Rosenberg game, but again, if you don't mind a bit of tenacity in your two-player games, then Babel is a great one to look at, and it has been reprinted with a kind of a magical theme, which I don't think is as cool. Moving on then, we played a two-player game. This is a two-player only game of Donuts. That we normally use this to end off a games day if I'm playing with only 2 players, because you can play like a 5-minute game of this and just play as many games as you like, just to fill in that gap. A very simple little Othello-like abstract strategy game where you're trying to line up 5 in a row. The twist on this one is that if you put your donut in between your opponent's donuts, then they convert over to your colour. And of course, you are sometimes backed into a corner and you are forced to make those moves. But really like this one. I wasn't sure if this was going to really fly or sink or swim, and it definitely has swam, and I'm liking it more and more. Staying on the abstract strategies, I played, I think it was a best of 3 of Karanga. Introduced this one to a new opponent, and I thoroughly enjoyed my games of this, and I always have done actually. Since I've got this one, I've been a huge fan of it, and it's going to be a big contender for two-player game of the year for me. So this is a chess variant where you are trying to move your pawns over to your opponent's side and one step beyond, and if you do that twice, then you'll win the game. But unlike chess, all these pieces don't have their own way of moving. They move based on where they are stood. So the reds let you go kind of as far as you like orthogonally or until you hit another red and so on. It's a super tense game. You can really read the map, but the variables are ever changing, so you can't really go too far ahead. But if you want to think that way, you can. And I just love the shifting dynamics and so on. I think I managed to just squeeze the win 2-1, but it was very tough and it could have gone either way. So a real brain burner, but so simple and elegant to play as well. That is Karanga, one of the best abstract strategy games out there. Let's stick with a few more abstracts then. So I've been playing some more Lacuna. A very interesting game that feels, although it is abstract strategy, it does feel unique. Because in this one you have this big kind of mat, and you're scattering these tokens all over that mat. And all you're doing in the whole game is you're taking 6 actions by placing one of your markers in between 2 of the same type of token. Then you'll collect those tokens. That's going to keep on going until everybody's placed their tokens. Then at the end of the game, there'll be still quite a few tokens left, and all those tokens will go to the closest marker that was placed. And it's simply a game of majorities from there. You want to have the majority of suits. So yeah, very simple stuff, super quick, but I do like how quirky and different this one feels. And I always say it's very difficult to make a fresh game in 2024, and Lacuna definitely managed to pull that one off. So probably not a game I'm always going to play, but I do like this one having in my back pocket to pull out and teach to people, because it is such a novel concept, even though if it is in a very annoying shaped box. Let's go to the last pure abstract then, and this is a regular feature on the channel, War Chest. So I'm not going to spend too much length talking about this one because it was a bit of a whitewash of a game. I think I managed to win in just a few turns because my opponent didn't really kind of capture their bearings. Very lovely little, I wouldn't say a chess variant, but it is like that, where all the pieces move in different ways, trying to control different regions. And if you control the majority, then you'll win the game, essentially. But love this one of the best games of all time. Sometimes you'll get amazing games, sometimes it'll be a bit one-sided, but hey, that's just the way it goes. So that is War Chest. I also played a classic two-player game with Lost Cities, a game that I am notoriously bad at. I always seem to bite off more than I can chew. This game went a lot better for me. I think it was actually one of the closest games of Lost Cities that I've played. both in quite big positive scores. Unfortunately, my opponent did just squeeze the win by creating those bigger chains and having those bigger multipliers. I did think that I lost some points on one of the categories, but I can't quite recall. But still, this is a classic. It's never going to go anywhere in my collection. One of the cornerstones of the two-player genre. And a great card game, good hand management, and so on. Good wagering as well on yourself if you can pull off those big scoring categories. So that is Lost Cities. Always a joy to get that one back to the table. The last game of mine that I played is a quick little two-player game of Huga. I played this one with my girlfriend. This is actually her game. A lovely little card drafting style game that's actually a reprint of Before the Guests Arrive by Sashi. This one is, you're basically drafting on this grid system, and you are collecting these different categories of cards, and they all have points assigned to them. But you're also collecting these animals that will allow you to bank those cards into your scoring piles. But the twist is that you can bank multiple cards of the same type with this animal card. So sometimes it's worth collecting quite a few of them before you choose to cash them in and secure them as points. But all the while, the time and the clock is ticking in which to get that done by, because any cards you have remaining kind of face up and not banked are going to be worth negative points at the end. It works extremely well. It's very charming, and I like it a lot, actually, way better than I thought it would be. So that is Huga. And the final one that I've played was a copy of Airlines Europe, which is a friend's game. This is by Alan Moon, who of course did Ticket to Ride. This was more of a stocks and shares kind of thing going on, where you are basically expanding the routes of these different airplanes, these airlines of course, and increasing the value of that company. And then you can choose to buy stocks in that company, which will pay dividends at certain points in the game. That's pretty much what the game entails, and I have to say that the choices in this game are pretty easy to make. Of course, you just collect the cards of the most valuable airlines. And I think my biggest bugbear with this game is that, number one, it's far too long. I think it took us nearly 2 hours to play this, which is obscene for the weight of the game, and also that the money in this game is so easy to come by. Like, you can always afford to do whatever you want to do. So there's no tension in the game whatsoever. So unfortunately, I did bounce off this one pretty hard. I don't think it's a well-designed game at all, but hey, that's just me. So that is Airlines Europe. And that's it really. That's all of the games that I have been playing. Hopefully you have enjoyed the video. If you have, please be sure to hit like and subscribe to the channel, and check out my other content too. And for everybody else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.